Y'all wanted to deep dive into one of the absolute darkest days in U.S. history.
Definitely a tough one.
The Virginia Tech Massacre.
Yeah.
And it is some seriously heavy stuff. And, we're all about giving you more than just a surface level understanding.
100%.
Right. So we're going to really take a close look at what happened back on April 16th, 2007.
Mm-hmm.
Why it still matters so much, all these years later, and what we can all maybe learn from it.
Yeah, and I think it's important with a topic like this to approach it with sensitivity and also just a commitment to really understanding all the,
The nuances.
The nuances and the complexities of it.
Exactly.
And remembering that this event had a profound impact on so many people's lives.
For sure. I mean, we're talking about a whole community here, a whole town.
Yeah, a whole nation.
Yeah. And when you try to picture Virginia Tech on that day,
mm-hmm.
It just seemed like any other Monday. Students were heading to class, they were grabbing coffee, just the usual hustle and bustle of college life.
Yeah, totally.
But then at 7:15 a.m., the first shots were fired.
Wow.
In a dorm, and 2 students, Emily Hilscher and Ryan Clark, were killed. And what makes this even more tragic is that the university response was really delayed and classes actually continued.
Just unimaginable.
Yeah. So a lot of students had no idea that there was this danger. And that obviously contributed to how horrible this whole thing became.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's chilling to think about how just a normal day turned into this total nightmare.
Yeah.
And then 2 hours later at 9:40,
mm-hmm.
the gunman, Sung-Hui Cho, went into Norris Hall and opened fire. And he ended up killing 30 more people before taking his own life.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And Cho was a 23-year-old senior at Virginia Tech.
Right.
And, we know he had a history of mental health issues.
Right.
And I know you sent us, a lot of material about Cho's manifesto that he sent to NBC while these attacks were actually going on.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit about what was in that content and why he might have chosen to do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, his manifesto and those videos, they were just filled with rage.
Wow.
It's a really disturbing imagery. He talked about being wronged. He talked about, injustices. He even mentioned the Columbine shooters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it just feels like he wanted to, make some huge statement and become infamous.
That was definitely a calculated move, sending those materials to a major news network.
Right.
Was totally deliberate. It was meant to amplify his message,
yeah.
which was hate and violence. And it really does raise so many questions about how, a person can even get to that point.
Right.
Of despair and anger,
Yeah, I mean, it's mind-boggling. And on top of all that, Cho actually legally purchased the 2 handguns that he used.
Right.
Even though he had this history of mental health issues.
Well, how is that even possible?
Yeah, that's the crazy part, right?
Yeah.
So at the time, Virginia law actually had a loophole in it.
What?
Yeah. Cho had been declared mentally ill by a court.
Okay.
But that didn't mean that he was automatically flagged in background checks.
Oh, wow. So it just totally slipped through the cracks.
It totally did, yeah.
Wow.
And so, you could say that this whole tragedy was kind of a wake-up call.
Yeah, for sure.
That showed everybody these huge gaps in the system.
And it did actually lead to some changes in both Virginia law and federal law, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the Virginia Tech shooting really forced lawmakers to close that loophole. So they had to strengthen background check, and they had to make sure that there was much better communication between mental health records and gun purchasing systems.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that wasn't already happening.
I know, right? It's awful to think about all those lives that were lost.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how maybe things could have been different. But, even in all this darkness, there were these incredible acts of courage.
Yes, definitely.
We read about Professor Livio Librescu.
Yes.
Who was a Holocaust survivor. And he blocked the door to his classroom so that his students could escape.
Wow.
And he ended up losing his life protecting them.
That's just an incredible story.
It really is.
It's so powerful.
And there are others, too, like Henry Lee, who was a student who barricaded a door to a classroom.
Yeah.
And he potentially saved lives by doing that.
That's amazing.
I mean, these stories just remind us that even when something this evil is happening, people are still capable of such extraordinary bravery and selflessness.
Human nature is a trip.
It really is.
Yeah.
But, we can't lose sight of the fact that 32 people were killed.
Right.
And 17 more were injured.
That's a devastating toll.
It is. And, you wanted to explore the wider impact of this event, right?
For sure.
So how did this change the conversation in our country?
I mean, this was a major turning point
It forced everyone in the nation to start thinking about campus safety, mental health resources, and gun control. And, there are no easy answers.
Right.
But the Virginia Tech Massacre really did spark a lot of very important dialogue about these really critical issues.
I mean, you have to think that at least something good came out of this.
I hope so.
Yeah, and Virginia Tech itself created this really beautiful memorial to honor the victims.
Yeah.
It's a semicircle with 32 engraved stones.
Wow.
One for each life that was lost. And every year on April 16th, they have a day of remembrance.
Yeah, it's so important to keep that memory alive.
It is.
And, to reflect on what we've learned and to remember those that we've lost.
Absolutely.
And I think this tragedy serves as a constant reminder that we need to be fostering a culture of empathy and understanding and support.
Yeah, well, this has been a really intense dive.
It has.
But I really want to thank you for choosing such a challenging topic.
Yeah, of course. It forces us to confront some really uncomfortable truths.
Right.
And to ask ourselves some really tough questions.
Exactly. What responsibility do we have,
right.
As individuals and as a society to address these issues that lead to these kinds of tragedies? What can we do?
How do we prevent this?
Yeah, how can we work together to create a world where this is unthinkable? Those are the questions we need to keep asking ourselves.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening, everybody, and for being willing to learn from this really difficult chapter in our history.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.